Welcome, macro sociology class. Let's continue with our discussion from last week where we started talking about government, economic, and work. And I introduced government and economics, the terms, and we talked a little bit about the Industrial Revolution and what happened, what followed, and that Durkheim responded to that as well as Karl Marx. And what we had is we said that workers were really robbed of that experience that they had with their work. It was like a relationship. Like, I love work. I have a relationship with it. And Marx was concerned with what he termed alienation. That was a term that it was a situation of being estranged or somewhat disassociated from your work and the surrounding society. So if you went in every day and just worked in a factory, maybe you would feel alienated. Like, think about your own life today and what work gives you or lack of work. There was some concern of this monotonous repetition of the same task over and over. Imagine working in a factory. I mean, where I like to think, you wouldn't need to think. So there was no control. He felt like the workers had powerlessness and that perhaps no control over the products of their labor or the distribution of the profits. Producing property that is owned by others. You work for another person, and sure, they make a lot of money. They get the rewards of your work. So, he thought, well, maybe people are, being exploited, and he was really concerned about the exploitation. We talked about that in Sociology 1. So, as I don't know if you remember, but Marx responded to that with another gentleman by the name of Engels, and Marx and Engels were really disturbed by this exploitation of the working class, and capitalism was forcing people to labor for low wages. So you wanted to make money, you had to work. If I wasn't going to hire you, I'd hire somebody else. So the owners were actually profiting a lot from the laborers of their workers because they pay their workers less than the value of the goods produced. And here they were making a lot more money, low wages, and we get our capitalistic society, right? So Marx and Engels responded to this, and Marx responded to the exploitation of the working class. Marx responded with this by saying that we need to have a solution. And what is that solution? We should give workers greater control over their workplace and the products of their labor. So he envisioned a revolutionary overthrow of the capitalist, what he thought a capitalist oppression was. Remember, he wrote the Communist Manifesto. And after a transition to this collective ownership, as opposed to that, the factory owners having it all, after a transition to collective ownership of the means of production, or what we would call introduce socialism, he would have this ideal of communism. And we'll explain what communism is in his idea. It's not today's idea of communism. Think about commune, together, equality. Not that everybody should be without or there should be poverty and only the oligarchy of the ruling class should have money. So we'll talk about his idea of communism, not what we're seeing, where we see in communism today. So actually, Marx's solution was to pioneer what we would call socialism today. And we'll talk a little bit about what a socialist economic system is. Now, it's hard to go from capitalism to socialism, but his original idea was he attempted to eliminate this exploitation. He attempted to eliminate the workers being exploited by the factory owners. So a means of production and distribution in society are collective rather than privately owned. So instead of each factory owner having the control over the factory workers, we would all together, production and distribution of a society, collectively own it, all together. I lived in Israel on a kibbutz, and a kibbutz is a socialistic society. Everybody lives on the kibbutz, everybody works together, one person does the works with the children, one works as a doctor, one works in the kitchen, one might work with security. Everybody's equal. Doctor isn't paid more than the teacher. Everybody's equal. Everybody works together to make sure collectively that they have the food of the farm, the means, and the production. And it works there. However, we've not seen it work in other places, as we know, certainly in communist China, Korea, Venezuela, all governments that have become communistic or socialistic, moving to a communistic nation. We have seen that usually what results is economic distribution of greater disparity between the haves and the have-nots. So the objective with Marx, was that the objective is to meet people's needs, the people over profit. So if we take care of the people, the profit will come. Whereas capitalism, as you know, is profit. It's the dollar, right? Socialism was concerned with, we'll take care of everybody's social needs, make sure everything's okay, and that will lead to greater societal fulfillment, which will only lead to greater work. So we'll see if we take care of this, people won't have as much stress. Certainly with socialistic cultures, all the societal needs are met. Socialistic, meaning its social needs are met, whether it's healthcare, education, etc., etc. So with this socialist economic system, government should make basic economic decisions, the government ownership of all major industry, like steel and auto and agriculture. And so we can see this would lay the foundation for what would later be a communist nation, which again is different than the idea of what we think of today. So socialist economic systems differ from those capitalist systems because, socialist societies differ from capitalism nations in their commitment to the social service programs, right? So a society that's socialist is going to make sure that everybody's needs are met, right? The wealth of the people as a collective wealth of the people is used to provide for health care, housing, and all those education needs I mentioned before. This differs from communism. Communism refers to the economic system under which the property is communally owned, no social distinctions, right, are made basis of people's ability to produce. So if you can produce a little, this produces a lot, everybody's equal, but what we found is everybody was equally poor, right? So people were just treated horribly under, as you know, communistic rule, and certainly all communist nations did not fulfill their responsibility. All nations known as communists have often fallen short of this ideal type that was originally suggested. It represents, when we say communism today, it represents an incorrect usage of the term. It has sensitive political connotations because of what's happened, and certainly because of the oppression of certain people. And I know for myself, when I was in a communist nation, I mean, you don't have the freedom that we take for granted. When I was in Vietnam, I was taking a picture, and somebody came over to me and said, "Give me your camera." And if you don't give it, you'll get locked up. I mean, I was taking a picture, and they didn't want me to take a picture. So when we think about communism again today and these solutions, it's not what happened. It fell short of the ideal type. Now, capitalism today, different than the laissez-faire, we have lots of regulations today, extensive governmental regulation of economic relations. So it's not laissez-faire. Prices are monitored. You can't have a monopoly. We have safety standards, consumer rights. I mean, you can't just put out a product and profit and people get hurt by it, right? So there are standards of safety that we see. So that concludes basically our discussion of economy and government, and we're going to move next week into work and work satisfaction. Thank you.